Hello, cyclocross friends, and welcome back to the CX Heat Check Power Rankings, presented by the Wide Angle Podium and the CXers Bulletin. We had an exciting week of North American cyclocross racing in Baltimore, Maryland, and I promise you that I'll keep the references to the wire at or below 3. All right, let's rank some power, and let's start with the winner. In 11th place is Erica Zavetta. A strong debut for the Pony Shop rider with a 10th in the C1 and 11th in the rainy C2. May not be where she wants to be based on last season's cyclocross performance, but converting crit watts to cross watts doesn't happen overnight. In 10th place is Lauren Zerner. She stayed at home this weekend and falls 3 spots to 7th. In the 9th spot is Emily Werner. In the last episode, I said that Werner's 11th in the C1 and 6th in the C2 had her trending downward. By exactly matching those results this week, I guess she's trending in place. 9th place. Again. In the 8th spot is Anna McGailey. A pair of 9s for the weekend could have dropped her down to her logical spot, but you can't mess with Werner's consistency, so that means McGailey holds on to her 8th place in the Heat Check Power Rankings. In 7th is Caitlin Bernstein. A bit better results this week than last for Bernstein, finishing 8th in the C1 and 10th in the C2. Inarguably solid results, but against a stacked Heat Check field, she still drops 1 spot. In 6th place is Hannah Ahrensman. Bouncing back from her lowest scoring weekend at Rochester, Ahrensman goes from 11th all the way to 6th, with a 6th place finish in the C1 and a 7th place in the C2. Now, sometimes I look back at how the Heat Check shakes out and I can see how someone could make the case they were snubbed. Sydney McGill could make that case. But snubbed no longer. We have righted my perceived wrong. Holding it down for Canada, McGill delivers 2 great rides with a 5th in the C1 and a 4th in the C2, after getting 8th and 4th last weekend in Rochester. McGill goes from off the charts straight up to 5th place and onto the wide angle podium. In 4th place is Austin Killups. On the field of play and also in the Heat Check Power Rankings, she has been battling with Raylan Nuss. It was a close call again this week, but with a 4th in the C1 and 3rd in the C2, it wasn't enough to break the status quo. Which means that in 3rd place is Raylan Nuss. A solid 3rd place finish in the Charm City C1 and 5th place in the C2. Nuss still needs to find a way to crack those top spots, while also holding back the rest of the field who's nipping at her shoes. And that leaves us with our top 2, Anne-Marie Wurst and Carolyn Mani. Last week, Mani held on to the top spot because she had racked up 2 wins at Roanoke and 2 second places at Rochester, while Wurst had only raced for 1 weekend. With Wurst sweeping the weekend in Baltimore, she is clearly the leader of the CX Heat Check with 4 wins. A dominant performance in wet conditions gave her 2 victories and some race pace preparation for the next 2 weeks of US World Cup racing. Mani is still best of the rest by a long shot and can look to regain the top spot in the future. She also hugged me on TV to show the world she wasn't scared. Thank you, Carolyn. And there you have it, the top 11 women in the CX Heat Check Power Rankings. Now, remember kids, if you screen cap the results, please make sure to also share the full video. That's the bargain you and I have with each other. Thank you. Let's get into the men's power rankings, starting with number 11. And that 11th spot goes to Dylan McNeil, a 10th in the C1 and 11th in the C2, following up on solid top 15 results 2 weeks ago in Roanoke. Welcome to the Heat Check, Dylan. Which brings us to the 10th spot. And I'm not exactly sure how to do this. Well, let me say this. The first CX Heat Check came out in August of 2019, and in the comments to that first episode, William Dowling said the following: No, this is John Anderson's year. From the first episode, and well, every episode since then for the past 3 years, William Dowling has relentlessly lobbied for John Anderson to be in the power rankings. And I'm not sure if this means I need to end the series here or what, but it's happened. Jonathan J Money Anderson has made the Heat Check, and it's well deserved. He's been absolutely flying. J Money broke into the top 10 in a C1 with a 9th place on Saturday, and he's been no lower than 18th in 6 UCI races this year. He's done it. J Money is in. Let's see if the heat check can survive. In ninth place is Scott Funston. Funston had to DNF the C2 at Charm City, but he scored a 7th place in the C1, and he just looks like he's ready to tear up every course he sees. Whatever the American equivalent of Vanderhole shot is, that's Funston. Vanderhole Scott? In the A spot, oh my, it's Strohmeyer. Andrew Strohmeyer. After taking a week off to recharge the batteries, Strohmeyer was back in action in Baltimore with a 10th place in the C1 and 7th in the C2. In 7th place is Scott McGill. You know, the guy who spent $200K in the breakaway at the Road World Championships like a week ago in Australia. That's Scott McGill. Clad in a purple kit and actual off-road shoes for this year's edition of Charm City, McGill was looking like a podium contender until, as my wide-angle podium colleague Michael Bodegheimer puts it, he went all roadie out there and started crashing everywhere. Despite the creative line choices, the Pride of Maryland was still strong enough to finish 6th in the C1 and 5th in the C2. Coming in at number 6 is Tobin Ortenblad. A counterfeit $100 bill may have cost him a place on day 1, and a fumbled $1 hand up at the finish added insult to injury. But if you put all that aside, Ortenblad continues to show his face at the front of these races. 5th in the C1 and 6th in the C2 caps off another strong weekend for the money man. Which brings us to 5th place, and well, it's Michael Vandenham. As popular meme account Clam Bitchin' Memes put it, MVDH, tired of placing 4th and 5th, finishes 8th. But the man bounced back to his happy place on Sunday, finishing 4th, and gets to snuggle into the warm, homey embrace of the 5th spot in the heat check. In 4th place, it's Kerry Werner. Last week he dropped to 11th after abandoning cyclocross to race gravel, but we said there was still a smoldering ember of heat left in him, and he came in with some XXL bellows and cranked that ember into a full flame. 4th place in the C1 and a 3rd place podium spot in the C2, Werner makes his presence known when he shows up to a cross race. And that brings us to our Heat Check Power Rankings podium. And in 3rd place is Eric Bruner. The 2nd place in the C1 and an 8th in the C2. After once again getting a little crashy, Bruner remains the one guy, other than Curtis White, willing to take it to Vincent Boston's. Declaring it's everyone for themselves out there. Bruner is gunning for the front of the race every time he toes the line, and the Heat Check, we're here for it. 2 spots remain in the power rankings, and if you've been following along, you already know who they are: Curtis White and Vincent Bastons. Vinny had run the table for 5 straight races since arriving in the US at the start of the USCX. Curtis White had finished 2nd twice and 3rd twice. By the numbers, Curtis should be 2nd and Vincent 1st. But the heat check is more sophisticated than just numbers, and as a revered Baltimore statesman once said, if you come at the king, you best not miss. Curtis didn't miss. He took the win on Sunday over Vinny B and broke the streak. That was the ultimate heat check, and for that reason, Vincent Bastons drops to 2nd, and Curtis White takes over the top step of the CX Heat Check Power Rankings.
Got this America, man.
And there you have it, the top 11 men in the CX Heat Check Power Rankings, and I kept the wire references to just 2, right there at the end. Up next are the Waterloo and Fayetteville World Cups, and then I'll be heading to Europe for a bit to take in some cyclocross racing over there. That means the Heat Check is going to take its midterm break, and we'll be back soon. Until then, thanks for watching, and please take a minute to share some of the content we produce at CXers that you enjoy. It means the world to us, cyclocross friends. Look, I remembered to turn the kicker light on this week. God, that bugged me so much last week that it was gone.